One of the requests that I receive most often is to make a video discussing the hidden maps of MapleStory. Categorized as hidden streets, these areas are usually accessed via invisible portals or other unorthodox entry methods like falling into a pit. I liked the idea of an exploration video so much that I decided to take it one step further. Today, I want to finally take some time to look at not just these hidden maps, but a few of the areas throughout MapleStory's history that may have been forgotten and remember what impact they may or may not have had on the game. A lot of these areas have been removed and subsequently forgotten with time, so let's explore these forgotten areas of MapleStory. The path to Mushmom is often forgotten and ignored due to its liminal nature. In this case, these maps reside between Hinnesis and someone else's house, with the two of these being far more memorable than the 4 maps that separate them. An empty house, Pig Park 1 and 2, and the resting spot of Pig Park are maps that don't have a lot going on, and admittedly only exist as an obstacle standing in the way of players reaching Mushmom. The return map variable for all of these maps is Hinnesis itself, so every time a player would change channels, they'd be sent back to Hinnesis and have to pass through all of them again to reach Mushmom. This makes them nothing more than a time waster that players would try to get through as quickly as possible in order to reach this area boss. I believe they're more interesting than that, though. The tree to the right of the taxi in Hinnesis has a hidden portal that leads to the first of these in-between maps, an empty house. This map holds exclusively orange mushroom mobs and has a nice layout, but these orange mushrooms aren't exactly as they appear. They're completely normal in every way, except for the fact that they each have a 30-minute respawn timer, making them worthless for training. This map is the less forgotten of the 4 since it eventually became the connecting area between Hinnesis and Mushroom Castle, and I think it serves as a solid opener for this topic. The Iron Hog statue at the top of this map with the barrier arm attached to it indicates the portal that leads to Pig Park 1. Pig Park 1 is a very long horizontal map consisting entirely of Iron Hog enemies, the gatekeepers preventing players from accessing Mushmom. Throughout the map, you inexplicably find these Iron Hog statues everywhere. The text on these statues reads, FGH, FGHH, GFH, GFG, GHAV. The artists couldn't be bothered to put real text on these, which I find very funny. Other than that, this map doesn't hold any secrets, unless you fall into one of the pits. Falling into one of these pits will lead you to the resting spot Pig Park. This map is nothing more than a small punishment for falling into one of the pits. It acts as a mini jump quest, and the top holds a portal that leads back to Pig Park 1. If you somehow miraculously manage to get through Pig Park 1 without falling, you then reach Pig Park 2, the last area before Mushmom. Where Pig Park 1 was entirely horizontal, Pig Park 2 is mostly vertical. There's a lot of climbing involved, and though this map is smaller, it takes just as long to traverse as Pig Park 1 does. Getting through this map allows access to Mushmom, but that's a story for another time. In Amherst on Maple Island, there's a small house with a portal that leads to the map's Snail Field of Flowers. It's not exactly hidden, but because the entrance was located in a rarely entered house, it went under the radar for a large number of players. This map contains exclusively snails, blue snails, and red snails. They're all very densely packed on this map for some reason, and it makes a decent training map if the character can handle the spawns, but it's far from the highest EXP per hour for an islander. When I first started playing MapleStory, I came across this map entirely randomly, and it opened my eyes to the potential secrets that this world could hold. After finding this, I became more aware of these potential secrets, and I kept an eye out for any hidden maps I could find. Located right in the heart of Kerning City, next to the hair shop, is the Kerning City Repair Shop. The entrance to this map wasn't identified by any sort of portal, instead only being recognizable by its two doors. The most fascinating parts of this map are its assets. The giant furnace, the background ingots and ores, the blueprints on the wall. Any map that features unique objects like these always stuck out in my mind more than your average Genesis map or a generic Perion background. It's one of the rare maps from the original launch that's still available in modern MapleStory 20 years later. Old school players might be more familiar with this map since Chris, the singular NPC in this map, was the only NPC in Kerning City where you could refine minerals and ores. Overall, Kerning City Repair Shop is easily overlooked, but it holds interesting features, and its obscurity makes it one of my favorite maps in the game. Off the beaten path between the construction site of Kerning City and the port town of Lith Harbor, we find the Kerning City Middle Forest maps. The first of these are required passage if you're walking to Kerning City, but the other two exist solely for the sake of existing. The most recognizable landmarks here are these triangle-shaped platforms with their flat tops. They're difficult to navigate and hold a variety of monsters. Maps with sporadic, random collections of low-level enemies like this could be found all throughout Victoria Island, and they're often forgotten for good reason. Having a large range of monster levels in one map doesn't tend to result in a cohesive grinding experience for any first-job character. It's often more efficient to find maps with concentrated monsters within a specific level range, though in my opinion, these variety maps are underrated in terms of EXP potential. I have fond memories of exploring Kerning City Middle Forest and ultimately finding that I just couldn't make these maps work as training areas, no matter how much I wanted them to. Three-Way Road Split is a giant map located just outside of Lith Harbor. It connects Lith Harbor to Genesis and Kerning City, and it has multiple hidden portals. 3 of them actually, but only 2 lead anywhere. The third invisible portal is actually real, but it doesn't do anything. In the files, it points to a dummy map that doesn't exist, which results in no action being taken if you try to enter it. I'm not sure what this map was ever meant to lead to, but it's interesting. Another map was probably meant to be implemented here, and it just never happened. That's not what we're talking about, though. The map we're discussing is located towards the bottom of this sprawling hub area. The danger sign located in the pit with the pig and the snails leads to the map known as Beach Hunting Ground. If we're talking favorite maps, Beach Hunting Ground might be near the top for me. A lot of my motivation to create this video stems from this map's existence and my experiences with it. I spent a good amount of time training here, and it was always my preferred map choice for early first job, whether it was efficient or not. Beach Hunting Ground has a very unique layout. You start on the left side underneath the platform with the exit portal, and in order to reach this portal to leave the map, you had to go all the way to the top right and enter the wooden doors, which would teleport you to the left side again, this time next to the portal. There was no way to enter this portal unless you had access to Flash Jump, which was literally the only other way to reach it. Even teleport wouldn't cover the distance required. The mob spawns on this map are a mess. They're located within these weird valleys, and the map has everything from regular snails up to ribbon pigs. Just like the Kerning City Middle Forest maps, it's a sampler of a lot of the early Victoria Island monsters. This map is almost a jumping challenge, and when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. In an interview, the creator of MapleStory, Seung-Chan Lee, specifically mentioned games like Super Mario Bros. As inspiration for MapleStory. So finding maps with weird jumping challenges like this that are just kind of baked into the world Makes a little bit of sense. This is not a trend we would see continued on throughout the rest of the game's existence for the most part, but if you look back in early MapleStory, you can find quite a few maps like this. Similar to the Kerning City repair shop, the platform that holds the exit portal has a few unique assets, the windows and the potted plant sitting on the far left of these windows. It always made me question what it was meant to represent. Are the white stones the outside of a building, or did someone create holes in the side of a giant rock and put a potted plant there? Something about this map feels comfortable. Traversing through it creates an engaging and memorable grinding experience that you don't usually get from other maps, and this might be the reason why I love it so much. I could continue to talk about Beach Hunting Ground for quite a long time, so let's head back to Three-Way Road Split and check out the next map on our journey. Hidden in the sunflowers is the invisible portal that leads to the Pig Beach. Similar to Beach Hunting Ground actually, this map requires the player to completely traverse it in order to reach the exit portal, a task made a lot more difficult with the presence of the Iron Hog enemy, who would respawn 1 hour after being killed. The inclusion of the Iron Hog on a map meant for low-level characters that was filled with primarily pigs and ribbon pigs is an interesting choice. Iron Hogs had such high avoidability that it was basically unheard of for a character who actually wanted to grind here to be able to kill it. This often resulted in players bringing their friends along or parking an alt here to take care of the Iron Hog area boss. Interestingly, we find another unused invisible portal at the very beginning of Pig Beach where players spawn. Just like the unused portal in Three-Way Road Split, this leads to a dummy map and thus has no effect when entered. I speculate that they originally wanted the exit portal to be right there, and then just changed their mind. That's about on par with the depth of these, beta stories anyway. What can be said about the Pig Beach that hasn't already been said? It's one of the most iconic old-school MapleStory areas, and any class could train here because of its ranged and melee-friendly layout. We probably all found ourselves here at one point or another. We also probably found ourselves being knocked off the platforms at the top with the snails on them. That was fun when that would happen. I have a very vivid memory of training here on a low-level warrior when I was a kid. I had put a bunch of points into Endure so I could recover HP while hanging off a rope. You see, the Pig Beach had no safe spots. If you wanted to recover your HP, you would have to reach the platform with the portal on it, or get yourself sent back to the spawn point. This could be accomplished by relogging or entering and exiting the cash shop. I was probably too high of a level to be grinding here because I remember getting something like 20% EXP per hour with this method, which is insanely low for first job EXP rates. I was broke and couldn't afford potions, but I had Endure, so I would kill whatever I could, hop onto a rope to begin recovering my HP, and then watch whatever was on Cartoon Network on my TV on the other side of the room while I waited. This extremely time-consuming HP recovery section of the grind was likely the largest contributor to my very slow EXP rates. I'm not sure why I never thought to reset my character's position to the one safe spot on the map. It would have sped up this strategy enough to make it almost viable, I'm sure. The real answer, though, just train somewhere where you don't take too much damage. An area that even I had completely forgotten about, located within Hennesis, is the Hennesis Game Park. This map was found to the far right of Hennesis Park, and I believe it was meant to be a hub for minigames. In the very early days of MapleStory, when we still had player-owned shops, players were allowed to open these shops on just about any map in the game, likely including Hennesis Game Park. Eventually, this was changed to only be allowed within free market maps. I believe, though I don't know it to be true, that the opposite was the case for minigames, OMAC and match cards. Whether these minigames were ever restricted to only being available within the Hennesis Game Park is purely speculation on my part. The legacy of this map is mostly that of a barren area that was used primarily as a hangout spot for hinnyhos, and the location where you find Casey, the master of minigames, who is responsible for creating minigame sets if you bring him the materials. There are hidden portals all over the place in Hinnis's game park that allow very quick travel through it. This map is huge, so these portals are a very welcome inclusion. However, by the time we received our version of the game, GMS, this map had already been forgotten, and I have almost no memories of it, other than it being a weird, out-of-the-way location where seemingly nothing happened. Now we find ourselves on a map that I love almost as much as Beach Hunting Ground. Over the wall is a hidden street found to the east of Parion. This map held stump enemies of all kinds, regular and dark stumps, as well as the 2 variations of axe stumps. This map almost suffers from the same issue that a lot of these forgotten Victoria Island maps suffer from, of monster-level inconsistency that would lead to it having no real place in the training meta. While I don't believe it's a great map in that regard, and would nowadays train somewhere a bit more concentrated in terms of monster level, I find this map fascinating, and it was a childhood favorite for me. When I was a young warrior trying my hardest to grind up to level 30, I found that the journey was more difficult than I had anticipated. And I was very bad at the game. I have a very distinct memory of getting to nearly 100% EXP somewhere within my mid-20s and then somehow dying to these very slow-moving stump monsters. So I went back and tried to level, finding myself once again dead at nearly 100% EXP. This happened maybe 2 more times before I was able to get over this massive hurdle of level 25. I loved to explore the world, and I would end up finding myself grinding at some of the least efficient spots you could possibly imagine. Truly, it's a miracle I ever reached level 30. The last map I want to take a look at today is another series of maps and their surrounding areas, the Cloud Park maps. While I personally don't have many memories associated with these maps, I am a huge fan of Orbis. I just love the aesthetics and the theme, and when I see these pixie mobs and the awesome maps that they're found on, it makes me nostalgic for something I've never personally experienced. Just like we find with the path leading to Mushmom, the first of these areas is often remembered because it was required passage to reach the junior kitty mobs found in the Garden of Three Colors maps. It's also the only map in this area that exclusively holds star pixies, and star pixies have a very interesting drop table. They could drop the Volter 2000 bow, they could drop the battle shield, which was not purchasable anywhere else, but most intriguingly, the Star Pixies could drop the Fish Spear, Pan Lid, Frying Pan, and the Sky Blue Umbrella. All of these are very iconic and sought-after old-school MapleStory items, so people would probably farm here quite a bit to try and get their hands on them. Cloud Park 2, where we find more star pixies and a small number of lunar pixies. This map, along with all of the other Cloud Park maps, have a few interesting assets, though none of them I believe to be unique. This map is very straightforward and it holds no secrets. No hidden portals, no secret areas, just a collection of pixies in a map layout that was considered acceptable back in the day. Between Cloud Park 2 and 3, we have Strolling Path. This is the first map wherein we encounter Nep and Death enemies, who are completely stationary and have a ranged attack. These monsters wouldn't be noteworthy in any way if it weren't for their exceptionally rare Nep and Death's honey drop that was required for a quest that ultimately resulted in a bone helmet reward. Nep and Death's honey was so rare that it single-handedly made these enemies relevant when they otherwise wouldn't have been. Heading into Cloud Park 3, we see the map design philosophy of early old-school MapleStory, where larger maps with a lot of platforms and spread-out enemies was the strategy. The layout of this map is reminiscent of Deep Ludibrium maps, where we find Grim Phantom Watches and Master Death Teddies. These enemies aren't present in Cloud Park 3, luckily. We only find more of the Star and Lunar Pixies, as well as the first of the Fairy enemies that we'll continue to see sporadically placed throughout a variety of maps. This is the first map we see in this area that has a hidden portal, and this hidden portal leads to Disposed Flower Garden, a map consisting entirely of Nepenthe and Dark Nepenthe spawns. Dark Nepenthes couldn't drop the Nepenthes honey, but they were smaller in number on this map, so it would have been a great place to farm regardless. Interestingly, the portal to exit this map doesn't align with where we entered. This might be a case of beach hunting ground where the developers wanted the players to traverse through the map in order to reach the exit. Or it was a mistake that was never fixed. It doesn't seem intentional. Leaving Disposed Flower Garden and continuing on to Cloud Park 4, this map is also reminiscent of early OSMS map design. It's massive, with the few platforms that do hold monsters being pretty heavily populated, and a collection of lunar pixies hanging out at the bottom. This map has no hidden portals or secrets to be revealed, instead being home to Spiruna in Old Man's house. Spiruna is involved in a series of quests, including In Search of the Book of Ancient, which is a very long quest line that unlocks access to summoning and magic rocks. In the very early days, Spiruna was also the sole refiner of dark crystals, the same dark crystals that were required to attempt the test of wisdom to unlock Third Job. This meant you needed to finish her quest Orbis in Danger to gain the ability to refine these dark crystals. This era of Spiruna dark crystal refining is entirely unfamiliar to me, but the questline doesn't seem too difficult. It's an interesting decision on Nexon's part to hold such an important piece of character progression behind a random NPC in a random house. Design choices like these are lost in modern MMOs and only exist in a late 90s, early 2000s world where information, though abundantly available on the internet, wasn't as widely and immediately shared as it is nowadays. Most of the remaining areas in Cloud Park hold no secrets and are painfully similar to the ones we've already covered. The one I've spent the most time in, though, is Cloud Park 6 without a doubt. Filled with primarily luster pixies, this map was a decent choice for a ranged attacker. I don't know if there's much to it though, other than how much I love it. Like we find with Beach Hunting Ground, the rotation around the map is bizarre and engaging in a way that I find very fun and satisfying. Climbing all the way back up to the top to start the rotation down again, the walk from the bottom right to the bottom left, I don't know, something about this I like it. I've spent a good amount of time training here on archers, gunslingers, and assassins who I believe all thrive on this map. Cloud Park 6 is nothing special to most people. I'd go so far as to say it's kind of just an okay map at best. But like a few other maps we've covered, it's special to me, no matter how mediocre it may actually be. Thanks for watching. Before we end this video, I want to give a quick shout out to my members on Patreon and YouTube for their continued support. At the big tier, we have Jerry L. Thank you so much, that's so generous, I can't believe that. And thank you to Remix My Life, Velarex, Tiago N, Gummy Bullet, Filamentus, Big Buddy, Connor H, Force Killer, and R. If you want to support me, one of the best ways to do so is through either Patreon or YouTube membership. You'll get a special role in my Discord server, access to my video schedule and future plans, as well as my eternal thanks for allowing me to do what I love.